into my dungeon.
Welcome to Kuldrin's Krypt. This is your host, Master Kuldrin. If you're new to the show, this is a place to dispel myths, get rid of stereotypes, and answer your questions about BDSM. You can call in at 865-268-4005 to leave your questions or visit the Krypt at kuldrinskrypt.com. On this episode of the Krypt, we are going to dive deep into aftercare, why it's important, why it's a must, and what you need to know about it. But before that happens, let me welcome, as always, Funsize. How are you doing today?
I'm really good. How are you?
I am spectacular. I went to a really amazing dungeon party last night. There was a demonstration on Primal Play and someone else there to do an interactive demo on biting. Learned a lot, had a lot of information that I already knew confirmed. So it was really a good time. Of course, got to play a little bit. Always a good time in the dungeon.
Well, I wish I could have been there to join you. It sounded really fun.
Yeah. That would have been a really good time. So before we get into aftercare, let me first hit those rules to love by. Rule number 1, safe, sane, consensual, and informed. Rule number 2, kinky from the KNKI app, available on all platforms. That stands for knowledge, no intolerance, kindness, and integrity. Number 3. That wonderful quote from Mr. Paul Young, submission is not about authority and it's not about obedience. It is all about relationships of love and respect. Hey, Master Kuldrin here. If you're having trouble putting together a contract for your DS or MS relationship, or if you just want something nicer, say in soft or hardbound, check out bdsmcontracts.org. I've used them in the past and I will continue to use them in the future. Use the coupon code Kuldrin20 for a 20% discount off of all purchases. That's bdsmcontracts.org. Okay, now to get into aftercare. So, where would you like to start with aftercare? You know, I'm big on definitions, so do we actually want to define it on its own or just talk about the individual things to give the definition? Because I feel that this may be a little bit different than some of the topics that we talk about.
Let's go ahead and define it on its own. My definition would be the care that comes after any scene and should be after every scene for both parties. Do you have a different definition? Anything you want to add to that?
No, I think that does it. It's pretty basic, in what it is, but in how to do it. I think that's the devil is in the details. Mm-hmm. So, first, check-ins.
Check-ins are things like asking your partner how they feel. It might come 5 minutes after the scene, or it might come the next day or 2 or 3 days later, or you might do it at various intervals where you hit all those points. It's just literally checking in to see how someone's doing, how they're feeling, if they had sub drop or dom drop, and how they feel about what happened. You know, and just making sure that you're on the same page with that person. Yeah,
and I know that in negotiating a scene, it's kind of a check-in as well. I'd kind of like to throw that out there too, that is a form of check-in, though that is not what we're really focused on today. We'll get into that in how to set up a scene. But that is very important as well, because that is pre-planning for the aftercare, because each person needs something different. And in setting up the scene, also taking a minute to talk about, okay, well, when this is over, what do you need? Like last night, the person that I played with or scened with, really all she needed was some cuddling. 5-10 minutes, of course, some water, got nice iced cloth to kind of soothe. And had we not had that pre-scene check-in to set up the aftercare, then I wouldn't have known what to do, and she would have dropped really bad, apparently, because that was part of what she told me, was that if it's not done correctly, then she has a really bad drop. I think check-ins really simple. You're just putting the other person first and finding out what you did right, what you did wrong, what they need, how they're feeling, and making sure that you can be prepared in the future to have a equally or better time, as it usually goes. More times you play, the better it gets.
That's absolutely right. The other thing that I would include, and this isn't part of check-ins, but it is part of aftercare, is to make sure that you have a first aid kit stocked and ready at hand. And this can have things, like you said, from a cloth that you can wet to kind of soothe any irritation to the flesh, to gauze pads, Band-Aids if there's been any breakage in the skin, Neosporin, some Advil or other mild pain reliever, things like that.
Yeah,
And
there's
they're
nothing
really
sexy
important.
about infection.
Yeah, you don't want infections. There are people out there, they're like, oh, we got caned and we have welts and breakage on our skin and now it's infected. What do we do? Well, you need to clean it properly, and at the point of infection, you actually should go see a doctor, and you're going to have a rather embarrassing story for your doctor.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, if I went to my doctor with some complaint like that, she already worries about me. It would be bad. And I think into that with things that are always necessary, and we've both said this, but having water or some type of fluid, Gatorade, something like that, ready, sitting there and ready for as soon as the scene is done. The body does go into shock and you're going to sweat a lot. Or most people will, at least some, and having that, it's just comforting, whatever their drink of choice is, but do not drink alcohol.
Yeah, absolutely no alcohol before or after a scene.
Yeah.
I cannot stress that enough.
And most private dungeons and public dungeons have a very, very strong stance on no alcohol. I know where I went last night, that is an absolute. They'll kick you out. You won't be able to come back, is my understanding. But I have seen people at private parties, instead of taking a drink of water afterwards, they literally turned up a fifth of Absolute and took a big couple of chugs of it.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm just going, oh no, that's bad. That's bad. And the things that it does to your body, even just a little bit, a single shot of alcohol when you've gone through shock of a scene, it's very bad for you. What else?
Not only for the shock of the scene, I'll also include that it actually dehydrates you, which can slow down your healing.
Yeah.
No alcohol. I would like to also throw in that you need to spend time together. Cuddle, watch TV, or take a bath and shower. Anything that makes you feel close to the other person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there are some people that I know that they're absolutely not cuddlers, and they will proxy the aftercare, and that is something that certainly needs to be negotiated as well. If you know that is something that you just don't do, make sure that you tell them that, and you have someone set up that you've already talked to that will step in and provide the aftercare for that person. And that's actually not as uncommon as people think. And it's not cold. I've heard some say, well, I won't sing with them because they won't do their own aftercare. Well, that's just it's just not their thing to do that. So I don't have a problem with that at all. I do have a problem with somebody who feels that way, but yet they do the scene and then they just walk off.
Yeah.
That's abuse, in my opinion, because being that vulnerable and opening yourself up to bottom to someone and then them just to turn around and leave. The mental issues that could cause. Wow. What about temperature?
Like you pointed out before, it is a type of trauma. When the human body goes through trauma, the temperature will drop, which is traumatic to the system in and of itself. So you need to maintain a body temperature. Now, this can mean that you're cuddling with the person for body heat, or you're wrapping a blanket around their shoulders, giving them a sweater to wear, things like that. But at the same time, you don't want them to get overheated. So, have cold water to drink and kind of find the balance between the two, just so that you maintain the temperature and stave off some of the worst symptoms of trauma.
Yeah, and room temperature as well. The place that we were at last night, it was a fairly hot place. It's an unfinished basement, but it was pretty warm in there. They had like a window unit set up and a lot of fans, and it was warm, especially once we got started. So probably going to wait until fall or winter starts coming around to head back over there. But the room temperature is definitely a major part of not just the scene, but the aftercare, because if you're trying to get your body temperature regulated, you need a good, comfortable, human-friendly temperature in the room as well. Massages.
Massages. I can't tell you how many times I've gone away from a scene, especially one where I was put into bondage and particularly suspension, when my muscles just ached afterwards, and the absolute only thing that helped was a little hands-on massage. And it doesn't have to be like a full-on massage laying down on a table or something. It can be as simple as someone sitting behind you and just kind of massaging your shoulders passively. Mm-hmm. But it really helps. And it's comforting. It helps with the soreness. I can't stress enough how wonderful a massage after a scene can be.
You don't like that immediately following, do you? Or
no,
because of the skin sensitivity?
The sensitivity and the fact that when I come down from those, most of the time I'm still kind of in subspace, so I'm kind of out of it. Mm-hmm. And a massage like that would just put me to sleep. Yeah. Which wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing, but at the same time, it's not necessarily something I want after every scene. So I typically like to wait at least half an hour to an hour after scenes to receive massages or to give them. But that's my personal preference. I know some people that do like to go immediately, and that's their thing. So I'm not gonna rain on their thing.
Are they heavy no. bottoms? Okay, so they've not got
heavy
a lot
at all. The people that like it immediately.
Okay, yeah. The person that I scened with last night she's not heavy bottom, in my opinion. She did take a fair amount, but she's definitely not what I consider a heavy bottom. But yeah, I took a wooden brush that I had used in the scene, and it's got some amazingly soft bristles on it, but I had a piece of satin that I wrapped around it and just barely grazed over her skin with it in aftercare, and to soothe it, and then put the cloth across her shoulders and maybe rub her backside with that, and then switch. And then eventually, like you said, it was about 20-30 minutes. I started, massaging her back and actually applying some pressure, just giving the skin a little bit of time to normalize. And that's really what you're looking for, starting to see some of the color come back, some of the redness go away, because after about 30 minutes, anything that's going to go away within 12 to 24 hours is pretty much gone. And then what is left is, like I said, it's going to be there for a little bit. Yeah, I'm all about giving some massages. In fact, here at my home, we do have a massage table that gets taken out pretty regularly, not even for scenes, just for fun. So it's something that I really enjoy doing. It's bonding. It really is. So that's a lot of the physical needs taken care of. Let's get into some of the psychological things. As you know, I am very big on psychology. So talking about what you liked or didn't like, where does that come into play, and how do you approach that? Because that can be kind of a hot topic for some people, especially.
It can be a hot topic, but I think it's a very important topic. It's part of communication and building trust, especially if you're going to ever scene with that person again. You talk about it in the sense that sit down, have a glass of water, sit there and go, so how was that? Was that okay? Be like, I found this part amazing. What did you think of that? Was there any part that you didn't like? Just be very casual about it and realize that we all occasionally make mistakes, and we all have things that we like that somebody else may not like or may not like as much. So just don't take it super personally. That's the best advice I have for it.
Yeah, and I would ask if any of our listeners or anybody that just happens to catch this particular episode has a problem with receiving feedback, that they really look inside and try to figure out why that is. But the reason for that is because as a top or a dominant, either way, it's that feedback that makes us grow and makes us stronger in our role and really teaches us. So we should not be afraid of that at all. If you are, then I really ask to reconsider that and try to come to terms with whatever reason it is that you may have an issue with that. For me personally, day number 3, that's when I would drop if it's going to happen. And that is when I also will do another check-in. I like to do it about 3 days after for myself and for them. But that is really where I personally get into my likes and dislikes, that kind of thing. What I did right, what I did wrong, because it's actually the feedback, which is all positive. I can't say positive or negative, because if they're saying, well, you did this, I really wasn't much of a fan of that, I consider that positive because I'm learning, I'm becoming better. And as you know, I crave that. So I always want to make sure I'm making myself better as a top and as a dominant. Any last words on the likes and dislikes?
No, I think we covered it really well. Why don't we jump into expressing our feelings after scenes?
Ooh, feelings, boo. Go ahead, take that one away.
Well, something that people may not realize when they first come into the lifestyle, or even if they've been in for a while, is that after scenes, you may be overcome with emotion, and it may not have anything to do with what just happened. It may be something that was just uncovered by what happened. And in those moments, you may feel the urge to scream or cry or even laugh hysterically. And you need to make sure that you know that it's okay, and that the person that you're with knows it's okay to express those emotions. Because it really is about accepting who we are at our core, and sometimes that's part of it.
Yeah. And when I was in Atlanta, back years ago, 20 years ago, this happened, went to a private party, and there was a guy there that it was just as we were, everybody was getting started. We had some food, some little sandwiches and whatnot. And there was a little demo that somebody did, very basic one-on-one, that was actually on your first play party, which I kind of thought was ironic because everybody that was there had definitely been to some play parties. But anyway, as soon as the presentation was over, they stood up and they're like, we're going to go ahead and jump in to our play. And just so everybody knows, when it's over, I will cackle like a jackal and have probably several very loud screams of release. So just be aware of that. And I thought, oh, that's okay, interesting. I was, whatever. But at the same time, it was really cool that they did that. And by God, they were not kidding. There was a lot of jackal cackling and about 5 just blood curdling screams that came. I'm very quiet myself as a top, at which, I think a lot are, but I have seen tops that get very vocal as well. And that's something a lot of people I don't think really thinks too much about. But yeah, you need to completely express yourself in whatever way is soothing to you.
Oh, absolutely. And then finally, showing your partner that you care. I want to say that this does not mean that you tell someone the I love you phrase unless you absolutely mean it. Don't ever use that as part of your standard aftercare. It can be severely mentally and emotionally damaging to a person if you don't truly mean what you're saying. But you just need to show that you care and show your respect to the other person for what you both experienced together. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, I definitely have that caution there too. And that can come from either side. Many times I have people just laying on my chest afterwards, and it has been people that I haven't even met before that event, and lay there and just look up at me or just speak those words, and I listen to it and heard them out. And then after they started coming down a little bit, some embarrassing moments on their part, just like, I'm sorry I said that. It's just part of it for me. But yeah, that, and just like you said, telling them that you care and making sure that you're there for them, or that the proxy for the aftercare, as I mentioned earlier, is well trained and taking care of them appropriately. Even if you don't do aftercare yourself and you have someone else do it, make sure that you do float your way back over to them. I will say that I have no problem with someone else doing it, but I think it is very important that you still float your way over to them, rub their back for just a second or something, and then ask them, are you okay? You doing all right? And then move away and let the person continue providing that constant care for them. But don't completely just leave them hanging. I do think that that's wrong.
Absolutely. Also, you need to make sure that when you have a proxy, that's something that's negotiated before scene, which I know we are going to hit negotiations in and of themselves in a later episode, but I just want to mention that very quickly today.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that is really short and sweet, but some of the most important things are some of the simplest to get into. So I think that is, unless you have anything else, that's probably going to wrap this section up today.
Nope, I think we're really good on this subject.
All right. Well, next week on the Krypt, Funsize and I are going to get into give you some pointers and tips on how to be more effective, not just in your kinky life, but also in your vanilla world. In the meantime, go to kuldrinscrypt.com for show notes, how to subscribe information, and the link to our Facebook group, Twitter, Instagram, Patreon, PayPal, all the good fun stuff, social media that you need to keep up with what she and I are doing. If you are getting any value out of what we have to talk about, visit the Support Us tab on kuldrinscrypt.com to find out how you can be a Patreon supporter and receive some free gifts. This has been Master Kuldrin and Funsize for kuldrinscrypt.com.
Unearth the truth.